Hello, hello, Cynthia Allen back again, and I'm excited to be with you. We're going to be talking about moving from wear and tear to wear and repair. I think it's a very important topic, and how the Feldenkrais method, and actually even Bones for Life, we'll talk a little bit about that as well, can be of value to you. If you are watching on Facebook or on StreamYard, I'm sorry, not StreamYard, YouTube, you want to notice that there's a little link there in the comments that says, hey, quickly register over on StreamYard. And that means that when you make comments, like saying hello, or you want to ask a question, or you want to say, yeah, Cynthia, or no, Cynthia, I don't agree, that I'll be able to see your name. And that's lovely for making connection. But either way, I will see your comments. So please do feel free to join in the discussion. Wow, yesterday, what a lively discussion we had together. Lots and lots of comments and questions on what are these Feldenkrais movements anyway. So that was a great one. If you haven't seen it, the day before was good enough movement. And what in the heck was the day one? Trying to remember. Already forgotten. Oh, darn it. Anyway, that's my life. Sometimes I don't remember things as clearly as I'd love to. So anyway, here we go. Wear and tear, from wear and tear to wear and repair. Well, so what can we say about this idea? It's so important really to get a sense that wear is not really a bad word. And we kind of know this in how we go about muscle strengthening, right? We say that you need to break down a little bit the muscle fibers in order for the muscles to become stronger. It turns out this is also true for bone health, that you need a little bit of I'm going to, sneeze. It's that season. And we need a little bit of wear. We need tiny, I mean, so tiny that's hard to imagine, micro fractures in the bone in order to be able to have healthy bone. So just like in muscle, just like in bone, there needs to be some stress on the system that calls the system to some kind of level of upgrading, of next higher level of strength or stamina. Now, and we also just, while we may not have any understanding that that's what's going on at the bone or the muscular level or the cellular level, we certainly know that when we start out doing yard work at the beginning of the year, it's like, oh, game on, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, that was a lot of work. And by the end of the year, it doesn't feel like as much because I'm getting myself back in shape for that particular activity. Some activities, like I used to have bushes to cut, you only do like once a year. And so I can remember doing this snipping, snip for hours, and then being like, whoa, that's a lot of soreness, because that's an area that I would not normally be using in myself. But it wasn't soreness in a bad way. And this is, of course, even though I don't like the statement, feel the burn, etc., this is what they're really referring to when they try to talk about that muscle workout soreness that can happen, that it's not necessarily a bad thing to challenge yourself and then have some soreness that goes with it, and then you organize at a higher level. The body goes, I got it. She is going to plan to use me in this way more, and I'm going to be ready for the next challenge. Now, we can also just think about this in terms of, I like to use the example of greenhouse flowers. So if you plant your little seedlings indoors, a lot of people start their seedlings indoors, they often come up extraordinarily spindly. And it's not just because they're close together, it's because they're not getting any outside stimulus. And so sometimes greenhouses will make sure that they have fans that put a little bit of stress across those plants. When there's a bit of resistance of wind, the stalk starts to get stronger. The roots go down a little bit deeper. So these same things apply to all organic beings, and we are in that mix. So what that means is that we are shaping ourselves according to how we use ourselves. And it's way beyond just in the muscles, way beyond just in the muscles. So it's so valuable to realize that, hey, it's also in the bony structure. It's also in chemical induction. It's also in our thinking that we are shaping ourselves according to how we use ourselves. Now, again, we kind of knew this. Athletes definitely know this, and that's why there's so much emphasis put on cross training. But a lot of times we still stop at the level of just thinking about muscle. We don't think beyond that. We certainly rarely think at the bone structure itself. So, the joint structure. So what is the right amount of wear? Well, the right amount of wear is the kind of wear that you need for doing what it is you want to do in your life. So if what you want to be able to do is to get up and down with ease so that you don't have to limit the number of trips to the refrigerator, to the laundry, to the kitchen, whatever, then you need at least that much wear, that much stimulus. I'm going to call it now, change it a little bit to stimulus in order for you to be able to grow stronger. That doesn't mean that you should get up and down 15 or 20 times. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more to try to build that. I think there's more intelligent ways than doing that alone, at least, but it is a part of it. So maybe what you want to be able to do is to run a marathon instead of a half marathon, or instead of a mile, or to walk around the block instead of being able just to walk down to the end of the street. Then these are signals of how much you will need to challenge yourself over time in order to be able to do that, in order to be able to do that thing. So there is a quantity of wear, and actually, or challenge, we could say challenge. And that's something most of us are used to thinking about, the quantity. We're used to thinking about the quantity. But here, let's start talking about what kind of wear, the quality of the wear. So this is where we move from wear and tear to wear and repair, so that it's not only about the quantity. For sure, you can do too much and then the system starts to break down, or you have an injury. But I'm going to say even an injury is not usually, it's not usually an overuse injury. It's a bad or less than efficient use injury. So this is really where somatic education starts to come in big time, is we're interested in the quality. We're interested in that you're aware of how you move, and that you have the tools for changing the way you move. So for me, having the tools, knowing how I move, having the tools for changing the way I move, this created for me and continues to help me. And anytime I get stuck in a pathway of pain, or I get even further down into something that we might call suffering, right, where we think we can't escape. So having the tools to know what you're doing, to be aware of what you're doing, and then how you can do it differently is a lifesaver. I think it's a life giver for sure. If it's not a lifesaver, it's a life giver. Now, commonly we hear this in the last probably 10 or 15 years, and I don't know who said this, motion is lotion. I love this statement, motion is lotion. And, I like it because it really highlights the importance of what creates health in an organic being. So if you want to have joint health, there has to be motion within the joint. The motion itself signals there to be a bathing, a lubricant quality. If you want to have health in the nerve structure, the nerves have to be free to slide and glide a little bit. They don't like to be touched. So if they're being touched directly by muscle structure or by bony structures, nerves are going to produce a chemical and say, stop touching me, and act in irritation because they need a little bit of slide and glide in there. They don't want to be compressed up against something. So motion is lotion. Can be thought about in a couple of different ways. One of them is that I need to move regularly, need to move regularly. And that's true. And also that there needs to be a certain level of flexibility in the system. And that's also true. But there's also another quality, I think, that in this idea of motion is lotion is that you might just still, if we say, look, you need to move, you might still just do the same movements you've always done. And so this is where somatic education becomes really important, is that the lessons are typically, particularly in the Feldenkrais work, typically they're designed to make it less likely that you do motion the way that you've always done. Because as you use yourself, one of the ways that you are shaping your structure is you're shaping your brain and your map of your brain, so that your brain maps around the sensory motor cortex, the homunculus, if you've ever seen the pictures of the brain, the homunculus, which is this sort of folkartsy representation of how most human beings assign the geographic territory of different body parts. And so there will usually be a really large head, really large lips and tongue, and really large fingers, and a tiny little body. And then maybe the feet might be a little bit larger again. And that's because most of us use our head, our mouth, right, our eyes, our fingers a lot in really primary ways, and we don't use the rest of ourselves so much comparatively. Now, if you were someone who was born without hands or arms, and you were using your feet as your primary means of feeding yourself and writing and painting, we're quite certain that the homunculus, the brain map, would be represented quite differently. Well, if you don't have something represented large on your brain map, then you're not very likely to use it very often. It's like any kind of map. If you have a map that is either inaccurate or emphasizes certain highlights over others, then you're more likely to choose those highlights. You're more likely to choose things that are clear to you. So we've seen in people with back pain, chronic back pain, for example, that they don't actually know exactly where their spine is, and they err in an inch or two towards one side, on the side they think that has pain, is their perception of where their spine is. And I always say, well, that doesn't seem like a really big deal, does it? Except if you think about picking up a pin and trying to pick it up and always being an inch or two off, or bringing something to your mouth and always being an inch or two off, it's going to make a really big deal, actually. So it does matter how we how clear our brain maps are. And again, this is another way that somatic education really helps, is that it takes those parts of ourselves that have been more or less off the grid, if you will, off the map, and starts to bring them back on, so that it's not an uncommon experience for people to say something like, wow, I had no idea that I wasn't moving X, or that I always move from Y, or I didn't even know really that part of my body existed. I remember years ago, really when one of my first classes, a family practice physician came, and he wrote me several little very wonderful testimonial kinds of things about his experience. But he would say in classes, so you're talking a physician, fairly well trained in anatomy, right? He would say regularly, I don't know where my pelvis is, right? I don't know where my pelvis is. Now, he had back pain for a couple of years, and in fact had stopped picking up things off the floor or putting on his socks with any kind of ease. And so for him, each week he would come in with some new discovery about something that had freed up for him. Like I remember the day he was able to put on his socks with standing. It was a huge deal, right? But also then he could start to pick things up from the floor. But it was so interesting how many times he would say, but I don't know where my pelvis is. And this was just another lesson to try to trick me into figuring out where my pelvis is. And he would say that jokingly. It isn't that he didn't know where his pelvis is. It is that he doesn't sense where his own pelvis is. He knows theoretically where his pelvis is, but he didn't sense where his own pelvis is, what the dimension, the width, the depth, and the available motion of it is like, and how it relates to the other parts of his body. So we can imagine that may have contributed to his back injury that really set him back for quite some time. So it's not just wear and tear of any kind. It's a particular quality of wear and tear. It's a particular quality of wear and tear. I think also another area that I really would like to highlight is when people have something that they consider to be dramatically structural, like joint dysfunction, osteoarthritis, or let's say even a nerve impingement, that when we start getting the right kind of quality of motion back in that area, oftentimes there is a major amount of improvement. So in a nerve impingement, many people think that nerve impingements, for example, are only caused by some bony structural issue that cannot be changed anyway except for surgery. And for sure, there are some situations like that that exist, but a lot of them are just tight muscles that have now gotten so constrained and holding around the area that as the muscular structure is able to soften, then the nerve gets some of its slide and glide back. Now, why is it holding? Well, it's holding out of protectiveness by this point. It's holding because it's had the wrong kind of wear and tear. So now there is a kind of a locking down in the system to say, hey, look, we've got to do something here. We can't keep going on the way we've been going on. So when we come to something like the Feldenkrais method, we go way beyond. The motion is lotion. We go way beyond motion is lotion. We're going to be going instead into, yes, flexibility matters. Flexibility matters. Dynamic alignment matters. We could think of this as dynamic balance. So the ability of the body parts to shift in a pattern moment to moment according to what the environment calls it to do, and to shift in a way that allows the pressure to travel through you cleanly. So how pressure travels through you is also extremely important. Now, there is not a lot of works that really break this kind of thing down so much. There are a lot of works that explore how much, the quantity of wear, right? The quantity of the challenge. And there are a lot of works that explore the actual muscle strength or the individual muscle flexibility. But there's not very many works that actually explore the quality of how you move, the quality of how you sense yourself, the quality of how you understand your function, your body parts in relationship to each other. So this is really one of the, I think, really unique things that the Feldenkrais method offers. Yeah, Donna says, nice dynamic shifting. Thanks, Donna, for joining in the conversation. So there's a couple of things that, I mean, I hope this is like lighting up some ideas for you in your mind, because first of all, it's very encouraging. It's very encouraging that you can change the quality, the way in which you move through awareness, through sensation, through quality thinking, changing the quality of your thinking, the how of it all. But it's also really encouraging that we can start anywhere, anytime, almost no matter what has happened, and be a more active part in our co-creation. We're already a part in the co-creation of ourselves, but we're a part in the co-creation of ourselves in a way that's unconscious. And we could bring that consciousness forward and do a lot more with it. Now, I'm particularly interested, of course, in the Feldenkrais method, because, that's kind of a major piece of what I do. And if you have a Feldenkrais teacher that you're studying with and you're enjoying that, it's working for you, you're showing up on a pretty regular basis, I say keep at it. Keep at it. If you don't, and you want someone like myself to study with, then I have my Your Learning Body community is now open for new members through June 1st. And then it'll be closed for the year. So we'll be bringing in the new members and really working with them over the next year, blending them in with the prior members and having an incredible community of exploration of these kinds of lessons that start to change the quality of how you move and give you the awareness and the tools for that to change and add to it. I also have open right now the Bones for Life training. That's by Ruthie Allen. And this is a particularly good training for people who are more interested in alignment and how pressure travels through you. So if you're concerned about alignment, or you want to work with people in a way that allows you to keep somatic education at the forefront of the burner, as well as keep some light on what does it mean to have good stacking of bone and joint health? What does it mean for the pressure from one bone to go through the next bone in a clean way versus in a way that shearing off? I mean, most injuries are caused through some kind of shear related thing under pressure or overuse. So that program is also open as well right now. And it's a particularly good one for people interested in bone, joint, postural health, or people who want to certify in somatic work to work with other people and do that in a way that's pretty doggone cost effective. So I wonder if there's any questions. I see a few people hanging out there. I'm going to just hang out for a moment or so just in case there are. And I'm really excited to have had you here today. Glad that you joined us. And, I think for me, this idea of from wear and tear to wear and repair is really empowering. The idea that I am co-creating my physical, emotional, spiritual self. It's not just something that I inherited. It's not just something that happens to me. It's not also purely my responsibility. I mean, there are some definite things that we need from the environment. There's some things that we need from our genetics to have maybe everything that we would want. And so we're not in complete control for sure. I'm certainly not suggesting that, but we can have a lot to do with it. And that to me means that we don't have to settle for ongoing struggle, ongoing chronic pain. Very rarely do we have to settle for an inability to improve in how we sense, feel, function in the world so that we move better, live better, feel better, and live better. Okay, looks like maybe no questions today. Thanks so much. I am going to take off tomorrow. That will be in the United States, our Memorial Day. So I'm going to take the day off, but I'm going to be back with the live session on June 1st with the question, what if? We're going to explore what if. So tune in to find out what if is about. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.